Well, let's also take a quick sidebar for a moment to acknowledge that we are living in the glory days in a lot of ways as a consumer. I kind of really got supercharged into shooting and buying guns in the like late like 99 2000 time period, and then definitely immediately post 9/11 I was like, I need to be ready to repel, Taliban paratroopers from the front porch of my house in Lakewood, Ohio, right? Like so.
Of course, as did I.
Yeah, it was the natural reaction in those times. But I vivid memories. I had a Shotgun News subscription, and you just sit on the crapper page by page, going through all the ads from all the distributors of what guns they had in inventory. And back then, your options for a semi-automatic battle, fighting rifle that was magazine fed, because like you could start off with like a $99 Norinco SKS, or and then later was the Yugoslavian
Now it's like
SKS.
$100.
Yeah. But then it was like Egyptian Mahdi AKs, and then it was the Romanian G-Kit AKs, and then it was there was the Setmays and the HK91 clones, but they were all hovering between $299 and $399. I remember the Setmays in particular. You could buy them for $299, and they came with 6 of the paratrooper aluminum mags with them, right? And some of the guns were put together okay, right? Like there was, but you knew when you were buying it, you were taking your chances with whether it was going to run out of the box or not. And then the other thing was is like there was no accessorizing it. There was like you weren't going to get an aim point to mount to it because there was no way to mount it to it. You were going to use hose clamps to put a flashlight on it if you were doing that. And then especially during that time period, good luck finding a magazine carrier to fit the magazines for those.
Travis Rolfe was busy like being an OG fifth group guy. There was no SOLAB outside of Nashville that was making any of this shit.
Yeah. So then you fast forward to today where it's like for $399, I can buy an AR-15 that even the rock bottom budget grade AR-15 will run at a level of reliability and shoot with a level of accuracy that is like in 2000 you would have never had that expectation for that money. And the crazy part about it is we're talking about a 25-year span that has gone on, and the dollar value hasn't really shifted, which is crazy to me that like everything else adjusted for inflation. Like we said, those Yugo and Norinco SKSs are $500-600 now. Like I don't understand why the consumers nowadays are so quick to dogpile on some of the budget level items, because it's like those budget level items are an order of magnitude better than some of the good products that you could buy 25 years ago.
I think the other thing though is that you had two directions of where the platform went. I mean, when I got into this, I'm obviously a little bit younger than you. When I was in high school and like really starting to like knew I wanted to go into the military, knew I was interested in this stuff, there was Colt, like Rock River, and then if you were some god tier person, the likes of which we didn't know, you could get a nightstick. Like if you were really someone, and some things never change. You still can't get a nightstick. I mean, I own a couple of them, but it was like this weird period in the Trump slump when you could get them off RSR, and it was like nothing special. But it's back to like god tier Jedi status to own CAC rifles. But there were a lot of people that spent a lot of money in design time. And it's kind of like, we've talked about it before. Raven has the most knocked off holster designs of anybody in the world. And, it's like, you and I kind of share a belief in IP, but it's like, dude, for what at the end of the day is fractionally less money. You could have a far better gun that is also funding the development of making the platform even better and pushing the bounds of the possible versus, taking whatever is the cheapest cast offs of that process, assembling them at whatever QC and pushing them onto the market. And this is where I bash, gun stores and other people like that is, there are a lot of people that came in looking to buy something cool and were told that the $400 AR was all they'll ever need for whatever reason, when really they were a Daniel Defense customer or a Geisley Super Duty customer or a Sons of Liberty customer. They may not have been a Hodge or a Knights or an HK 416 customer, but they wanted something, you could have created the value of being like, hey, the 416 was designed by, Chuck and friends to fire 30,000 round a week firing cycles and then put on a C-130 and flown to Iraq and do a full deployment and come back. But we took a lot of that technology and we moved it into this direct impingement package that for $1,800 can go home to you. and they would have appreciated that, and they would have wanted that. So part of me is like, I can't wait till we get out of the race to the bottom, because all it did was hurt gun shops two ways. The other thing I tell people is, you're managing all the paperwork for this for less profit than you get for transferring the PSA. If we would just shift the discount budget, shot in the dark grade guns to PSA and let them just monopolize that market, A, it'll stabilize the pricing on
Yeah.
it. B, you can just collect the transfer. I mean, I got guys that are like, oh, you bought a used Sacco 308 rifle at a pawn shop in Florida when you were on vacation and had to have it transferred back here. That'll be $30. All right. You bought a PSA lower, that'll be $100. And so, that's where the individual shot can weigh whatever their uh, value of their transfer is. But I just know that, you're bringing in this stuff, logging it onto your books, running the risk of a 4473 and a trace.
Uh-huh.
Because let's be honest, I mean, you can get mad at me all you want. I'll pull up the fucking evidence photos from Fulton County, and you point a single AR pistol on there that retails for more than $600, and I'll hand you $600. Like, if I'm going to murder the rival crack dealer on Cleveland Avenue, which is just north of the Atlanta airport, that shit is going in the Chattahoochee River when I'm done, and I ain't doing it with an MCX. I'm not buying whatever Grand Thumb's pimping this week. I'm getting whatever the cheapest thing that will fire the drum magazine and then go into the river. And so, you're taking on all this legal liability, whether it be the paperwork or, just your guy was hungover, wasn't paying attention and logged it in wrong. And, now you've transferred in and out 500 serialized items to make what, $1,000? You could have sold 3 decent guns and a couple of aim points and made more money.
That's the other thing, is that the majority of the time that those transfers are happening, the retailer isn't capitalizing on the fact that the guy's standing in their store to begin with. Like, the gun came in. They knew that the guy was, even if the dude hadn't called ahead, a gun shows up that it's going to be a transfer, right? Like that. And so all of a sudden, I know that, some chump is going to be coming in here to transfer this thing, right? If he has an AR that lands in my shop, if I don't have my staff go pull a sling, a light mount, an optic mount, possibly a different buttstock, possibly a different front sight, whatever, right? Like you could go through and lay out a whole catalog of items in front of them. You wasted the entire opportunity of doing the transfer in the first place, because the transfer, whether that was a gun that you're just doing the transfer for it, or whether it was you bought it from a distributor and you're going to sell it for the 12% markup that most places you actually get for them, you wasted the shot at the prize, right? Like, which was your opportunity to sell them all the stuff that you get 30, 40, 50 points of margin on in the store. And the worst part about it is, most of these retailers, if they had the foresight to put those items together with the gun so that when the guy came in, you're like, by the way, we've got a whole assortment that will go great with this. Most of the shops don't have a selection that is curated enough to be able to take a peer level product in the optic category, in the light category, in the mount category, in the sling category, and put it together with that. Because the guy who's coming in to buy his $400 or $500 AR is not the person that you try to show a Maul and a EOTech and a Surefire Scout to. You're going to be showing him different accessories to put on his gun, but they don't have the full assortment for even the high-end stuff, much less the different levels of quality along the way, or price point within that product categories.
Well, but there are also a lot of guys that jump on the internet or listen to the gun tubers, and they're like, all you need is PSA, and PSA works fine, and blah 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 blah. And I mean, obviously I hang out a lot at Gorilla, and I'm good friends with Topher and the guys that are there, and they do have the full selection, and there is a bit of salesmanship that goes into that store. Now, they are next to a huge Marine base, and that's already an enthusiastic market. But you walk in there, and they have Geissele triggers for days, and they have upgrades and stuff like that. So I tell people, like, even if you're going to play in the realm of budget and discount stuff, at least be able to maximize the profit out of it by upgrading these things. And really, as much as we can talk about the salesmanship around it, we're kind of missing the overall warning that what was a completely robust, expanding company 24 months ago is now gone. And that's something that, not to drag us down the rabbit hole of necessarily what I do, it's like the scary thing is, I think they managed keeping their inventory from hitting the market and just wrecking everybody else. But if we do enter a recession towards the end of the year, the amount of gun inventory that's going to flush back onto the market at next to nothing. Guerrilla's where I hang out the most. I mean, my ears in a lot of different gun stores. I mean, there's a guy that brought an SDV9 in, that cheap Smith silver gun.
Hmm.
And they were like, bro, I can't give you more than $50 because I'm not gonna be able to sell this. I mean, if I sell this for $75, and you think about it, like almost any functioning firearm of decent repute is worth $100 bill. And we're not at that point anymore where it's like, man, I really don't think it is. Like, there's no resale in it for me.
Yeah. Well,
That. And so guns used to have an intrinsic value, but there're just so many of them out there, and the market's been hit. And kind of what you were talking about of the boomers as they move to the nursing homes and their collections come back. And to go back to the mid 2000s, I'm not disparaging him because he's passed away now, but think about all the people James Yeager sold on preparing for the apocalypse. Like all their food that they bought back in 2005 after, 10-day contractor band camp in Tennessee has gone bad, but their ammo hasn't. I mean, all that ammo is going to come flooding back onto the market. All those guns, all those magazines.